Welcome to Gunther Cooper's reading response on poverty. Gunther has his Mocha Macchiato in hand, and we're ready to talk about poverty in terms of how they affect the school. So, the readings for the day were from Gortsky, chapters 4, 5, 6, and 8. And Gortsky talks about, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, I'm sorry if I butcher it. It's just how it looks. I'm going to say Gortsky. But anyway, chapters 4, 5, and 6, 4, 5, 6, and 8, talk about how poverty is not only affecting schools, but also at home, and how we can help benefit people in poverty. And the pigs, when tracking takes a toll, we are talking about a story about a young little boy who was doing okay, and then when he came to school, he got put into a reading level with everybody else who was doing bad, rather than the reading level that all of his upper peers were doing. And so his parent, at the time, his mother, pushed him to be that kind of person. She pushed him to basically be in the higher forms of reading, and therefore was able to do it, and started thinking about what would happen if I didn't do it. So let's ask a question. Why do people in poverty get the need? Let me repeat that. I'm sorry. Why do people in poverty need the resources they need? Now, I want to go into a little bit of information dump. It's because people in poverty they're not equipped to deal with the certain circumstances. They don't have the right health care most of the time. They don't have the right, stance in the community. People in poverty are 3 times more likely to have disabilities than everyone else because of them working constantly. They're not there for their child because they have to support a roof over their head. And so, not in recent years, like, this has been going on for a long time, we have developed the stereotype that people in poverty are lazy, and that people in poverty have a lot of disabilities and stuff like that. I even heard one where, coming back home, I grew up in poverty half my life, and I got told that I was an alcoholic, which was kind of funny, because I never drank a drop. But anyway, it's how stereotyping is. It's like, for instance, I want to bring up my dad in the story, okay? My dad is a truck driver, and so he has to be very precautious about the road. And so, if a car whips out in front of him, and let's say a male is driving the car, he'll curse him out, he'll blast him off till kingdom come, you stupid, blah, 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 you son of a crack, that kind of thing. But if he presumes that a woman is driving the car, he's gonna say, women are just, terrible drivers, it's just horrible, they shouldn't even be driving. And that's how my dad grew up. He grew up on the stereotype that women are bad drivers. And, it sucks to hear it from him, especially since I have to keep telling him, look, not all women are horrible drivers. Look at Mom, for example, or look at the nearest ambulance driver. They're not all bad drivers. But he was grown up in a society that thought that women were horrible drivers. And this is the same about poverty. Not only does the stereotyping hurt the poverty community, it casts a shadow on what people and kids in poverty actually need, to the point where they're not being helped. So what can we do? I mean, there's a few ways. One of the ways I didn't write because I just thought about it a few minutes before recording it, so I'll explain it after this one. But one of the ways is for integration. Integration, basically, when we let poor students into wealthy schools, for instance, the American Life, for example, when this was happening for a black school, not poor school, but at the same time, it does the same thing, where poor students, if they get pushed into a wealthier school, can do better because they have more resources, they have better health care, they have better teachers, and therefore are motivated to learn, rather than if they stuck in their poverty schools, then they can't do it. They're basically told that they can't do it. They can't grow out of it. For instance, I want to bring up also another story, The American Life. Not this one, but there's a book. It's glancing my memory out right now that we were reading in English class this semester. And it's about how kids on an Indian reservation are being told that they are not going to leave the reservation. And it's really sad. And these are kids in poverty that can't do anything. And most of their parents and, closest friends have given up about everything in the world. And I think with a little bit more materials or help, we can help the kids. Another way is through economics. Let me explain. In economics, there's a term called cover the blanket. Now, if you haven't heard this term, it's alright. Cover the blanket means, let's relate this analogy to like a cake, okay? You just made a cake, okay? You're ready to put icing on it. And so what do? You cover 1/4 of the cake. What? Why not the other 3/4? Well, because those 3/4 are burnt. Why not cover the other 3/4? It's still cake. Either way, if you spread the icing across the whole cake, every bit gets better. Okay? If you spread it only over 1/4, that's a lot of icing for 1/4 of the cake, and the 3/4 of the cake are now suffering because now they're more bland. The same thing happens when we talk about wealthy kids versus people in poverty. In how, okay, you spread 1/4 of the icing for wealthy kids, and you give them basically they're 1/4 of the cake, and you spread all the icing on them. Yes, they're going to get better services, but at the same time, the people in the poor neighborhoods can't get the same services as the people in the wealthy neighborhoods. And so what do? You cover the blanket. You spread the icing all over the place. And so you not only help the wealthy kids get the education they deserve, but you also help the poor kids that haven't gotten the education they deserve, haven't gotten the materials that they need to learn, haven't gotten the teachers that they need to learn. Because not only does poverty affect people who are poor, but it also affects the school system they go to. For instance, let's create an example, okay? 3/4 of one population, let's say in one county, 3/4 of them are rich. and 1/4 is poor. They will get more services than a community that is half and half. Because the 3/4 can pay for more than everyone else can. And so they can help patch in the, lower ranking people, which sounds horrible, but the people in poverty. So, who else does this help? If we decide to go with these ideas, who else does this help? And I wanted to bring this in because, yes, this not only helps kids in poverty, but it also goes with a bunch of other aspects. For instance, African Americans. In the story, The American Life, they take students from Normandy and they bring them to Francis Howell, a school that is more wealthy than Normandy, because Normandy's going under. And how do they fix it? The kids are more likely to succeed. The kids in Normandy were getting F's, D's, and the school staff was not great at holding responsibility. But when you move those kids into this school called Francis Howell, that is consisted of a bunch of rich people, or at least people who are able to support the school. We're talking about like upper middle class. We're not only helping with them, but we're also helping with students that, haven't learned how to become good role models. Now the kids want to learn how to learn. They're excited to learn. And I think that's very important for what we need to do as a society. But this doesn't just help, ethnic groups. It also helps people with disabilities. Disabilities get hurt more the longer you leave people with disabilities in poverty. And this is shown true, because in poverty you don't get the same, medical resources. You don't get the same, help. You don't get as many teachers or materials that you need to help this kid with disabilities, let alone hundreds. And yet, people in poverty have a lot more disabled people, a lot more mental disorders, a lot more language disorders, because their parents are working hard, long hours to support their families. And so not only does it help ethnic groups, but it helps peers with disabilities, because we get to help them not understand, but to function in the same society. And we get them that help they need and deserve. So my question to you is, what other methods do we have? There's layering the cake. It's spreading the blanket. I'm sorry, I mix those two terms up all the time. So spread the blanket. And there's also the fact of integration. But I know integration really doesn't help, especially since you're ripping people out from poverty and you're literally throwing them into wealthy schools, which hurts them culturally. But at the same time, what are better ideas? And I want you to list them in the description below. What are better ideas to help these kids who are in poverty with education and helping them build their futures? Because we're not talking anymore about, well, wealthy students get the better degrees. No, we're talking about these kids could be your next doctor. These kids could be your next lawyer. These kids could be your next whatever. nurse, teacher of your of your children, and your grandchildren. So, what should we do? Anyway, see you later. Bye!